to lead the master planning for ASU and his New American University. So I retired from Tempe, took the weekend off, and went to ASU. And then after completing the master planning, then I formed a real estate development group for the university and worked with Pat on that for a number of years. Retired from there in 2013 and formed a couple of development companies to kind of do social good work. So I'm in building or developing in education, healthcare, government facilities. And my latest little venture is athletic facilities. Cool. So that's me. Pat, do you want to introduce yourself before I start here?
Sure. So I'm Patrick Panetta. I'm an architect and planner for the university here in the ASU Real Estate Development Office, which I used to work for Steve. I've been at the university since 2003, so almost 13 years. I got the very good fortune to work with Steve on planning and acquisition of the parcels we needed for the downtown Phoenix campus. So that's how we actually started about the same time, and that was our first major project that we worked on. But my background, as I said, I am an architect. I went to graduate school at a different school in Arizona and got an MBA with a concentration in project management, which has really helped my sort of architecture and planning career. Worked for the federal government for a number of years. I was with the Air Force and the Smithsonian before starting with the university. So I've been involved in a lot of the master planning efforts, and my office is in the process of developing the 300+ acres on the north side of campus along Tempe Town Lake for our athletic facilities district. So I'll pick up where Steve leaves off.
Good. So as I understand it, you've gotten kind of briefings from other people as it relates to the formation of the district, the work that Dr. Elmore did, and leading up to kind of Tempe's taking over after the referendum. Is that a good place to start here? So I started with the city of Tempe in 1978, but as the district, Rio Salado district was evolving, at that time I was a principal planner in charge of design review for the city, and so I was asked to monitor what was happening in the county version and to make sure that Tempe's interests were protected as the legislation and the district idea moved forward. And that was my first introduction to Dean Elmore at that point.
And that was in 78, you said?
Well, I started in 78. We didn't start working on Rio Salado until, or I didn't start working on it until about 1985.
The project was in Valley Forward, I guess, when you came on board.
Yes.
And then they handed it over to Rio Salado Development District, which, tell us how that was formed. You know that.
I don't have that information about how it was formed, so I can't tell you that. The interesting thing about, so I was asked to take over Rio Salado, and when the district vote failed, at that point is kind of the key elements here that occurred is so there's a referendum to build the county-wide district. It fails in every city but the city of Tempe. The mayor at the time, Harry Mitchell, he came out in the press that day and said that we have a mandate to build it in Tempe, and we're going to move forward regardless of what the rest of the valley does. What people don't know, and I will deny this if you put it in print, but the vote passed in Tempe by 11 people. There were 11 votes. We never brought the vote tallies out for anybody to see, but we had a mandate, and the mayor wanted to do this, and so he called me up that next morning and said, "Okay, Steve, I committed us. Figure it out." And so at that point we started. We basically we took all of the plans that had been done by the Rio Salado district, we had the models, they were glad to give us everything. So we had all the materials. And then we took a look at, so how do we right-size this for a community of 166,000 people? And the part of the issues here really was, why did we do it in Tempe? Is we're a landlocked community, 41 square miles, and Rio Salado area in Tempe represented 10% of the developable land in our community. It was too valuable of a resource for us to just turn our back on. Everybody else had at that point. Rio Salado through Tempe, back in the day when we were looking at all of this, was the dumping ground for every nefarious activity, underutilized land, wildcat dumping. It was pretty rough. And so we had a mission to move forward. One of the reasons we also wanted to do is that we just were in the process of moving forward with a very successful downtown revitalization effort, and we wanted to expand that to the town lake. And so that was the impetus for that. This slide was really just to kind of show you from a proximity perspective so here's the town lake, Mill Avenue, ASU, but you can see the proximity to the runways. So we're close to access, the freeway system, and if you took a look at the time we were doing this planning, the demographic center and geographic center of the Phoenix metro area was at what's now the 101 and 202 freeways. So we're dead center. It made a lot of sense to take a look at this area. And so the notion of the lake, this is a really tough slide to read, but what it wanted to show here is, so first of all, this is 1931 showing the flooding, but when we started in 1985, it didn't look much different than this. The river was not channelized. Once you got past the railroad bridge, it fanned out. It was like 5,000 feet wide. This slide, it took me a while to figure it out. I had to find the caption because they had superimposed the 2003 development to show how we had reclaimed the land through channelization and what had occurred after we channelized the river. So the public referendum, it failed. The mayor asked us to move forward, and they tapped me to be the Rio Salado project manager. Truth be told, I said no thank you. We had concerns about whether this was going to be, from a staff perspective, a dead-end job, that I'd just gotten pigeonholed into a project that couldn't possibly work. But after I said no, they said sleep on it, come back the next day with a different answer. And so I did. I had a different answer. And so at that point, we started taking a look at Rio Salado differently. ASU then comes back in and plays another role. So the idea and the concept was formed here back in 1987 after the referendum. We sat down with a number of the professors in the planning and architecture and asked them to help us envision what Rio Salado could be. And there's a model now. Is it still in the
lobby?
In the lobby of the architecture
North
building?
building.
So that model was the product of that first study work, and it was, so a community of our size, we want to do something in Rio Salado, what's the best thing we could do? Well, the first answer was we should just build riparian habitat and channelize the river and not do too much more because it would be too costly. And so we moved forward with that idea, but the planning continued and eventually evolved around the concept of building a 2-mile-long lake in the center of a flood channel. And the thinking behind this was that if we had a flood event, if we went that riparian habitat way, it would be all gone. And so then we're starting from